Hello, everybody at Choir of the Earth. Ben and I are delighted today to have with us the wonderful Patrick Hawes, who, of course, composed what might be the choir's anthem, Quanta Qualia, which we have recorded at least twice, maybe more to come in the future, Patrick. But Patrick, you're very, very welcome to this conversation.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much, Mark and Ben.
Oh, well, it's our pleasure. And we were just delighted, Patrick, and honoured to be able to assist you to get Quanta Qualia up to last year. Was it 74 in the Classic FM charts, but still in the top? Was it top 200 this year?
Yes, it was indeed. And I couldn't have done that without you and members of the choir. So thank you very much. It's a wonderful thing, the Hall of Fame, really, and to have a piece in it is a great honour.
Well, it's our honour, to be honest, Patrick, to have had a chance to sing and to really take your music and Andrew's words into our hearts, because, I mean, what a piece. I was recently interviewed by the University of Bristol, and I had that typical question: if you were stranded on a desert island, what piece would you take? And I chose Quanta Qualia, and it was the original 2020 version. To take nothing away from the remaster, the second recording, but that piece will always be right there, and I just love every millisecond of it. So,
well,
thank you.
I'm really touched that you said that. That's a big thing for you to say, Ben.
It's true. It's true.
But there is something about that piece, which I wrote very early in my career, which does have a universal appeal. And the thing is, it's got this all-encompassing text, hasn't it? Which wants to embrace the world. And I think that's why it probably suits the choir so well. And I love both of the recordings that you've done. My favourite is the second one. I was blown away by that. It was about this time last year, wasn't it? Or was it in the summer last year?
It was the autumn. I think we did it. We recorded in September, and the premiere was in November.
Oh, was it?
It wasn't that long ago.
And no, yes, but I remember hearing it, live with you all, and I just thought, this is how it's always meant to sound. I think I said that on the chat.
You did.
Again, it's the kind of epicness of it, the universality of it. It can be an intimate piece, and I have arranged it, of course, for piano and organ. And it works in that context, but it works best in the way you've done it.
Wow.
I think I can really honestly, hand on heart, say that.
That's really kind of you, and it meant so much to us when you said that in the chat. And I think, having known the piece for a long time, because we've known each other a number of years, that the cello really, really works. Do you agree?
I do. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason I prefer the second recording. Definitely. And it was beautifully played, wasn't it?
Oh, my goodness.
But there was just something about the enormity of the mix. As I say, the universality of it, the epicness of it. And that, of course, is the great thing, or one of the great things, that Choir of the Earth can offer that other choirs can't. The epic sound.
No, you're absolutely right. I was speaking with Connor, who you met, and when you very kindly came and sat in on a mix session for us on the second recording. It's really interesting to see how the art form of what we now call digital choirs is developing from, I suppose, in the beginning, what we were trying to do is to kind of trick the listener into believing that what they were hearing was a traditional choir with double mic set up, standing in front of you in a cathedral. But what we're now starting to see with the art form is this kind of move away from that, a bit like the early movies. The early Hollywood films were just sort of filmed plays, but then you had the early innovators like Georges Méliès who started doing things like move the camera and bring in special effects. And we're starting to see, as you say, this epic view of a choir, which is, rather than a group of people in front of you, it's all enveloping, it's all around us. It's immensely exciting.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And of course, we're living at a time when things are changing. Things are always changing, I know, and developing. But there's something about our time, the current few years, which I believe is enormous. I don't want to say apocalyptic, but you see, do you realize that we're living in the third year of the third decade of the third millennium? I think I've said that to you both before. Some people may say, so what? But just think about it. That's an enormous thing. And I think it's a pointer towards being a huge watershed in the arts and in music and in choral singing and in digital platforms. And I also have this great theory. I don't know if it's a great theory, but I believe it's an important theory, and I don't hear it a lot anywhere else, if at all, that modernism is coming to an end. It has to come to an end. And in fact, I'm writing a book at the moment called The Renovation of Music, because I believe in 100 years' time, when students of music look back and they see Renaissance, Baroque, classical, romantic, modern, it can't stop there. It can't go on for centuries and centuries. It can't be modern, postmodern, neo-modern.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, but it's got to go. But I think people have got to make an effort to get rid of it, to be brutally honest. And I believe, I've thought so long about this over so many years, but I believe a word that could follow romantic, modern is renovative.
Oh, I like that.
That's a good
Because
word.
I think I think the arts have suffered abuse. Dare I say that? I mean, I believe if we can abuse ourselves, then we can abuse one another, and we can abuse nature and the planet. Of course, we can abuse the arts, and the arts haven't been free from it.
No.
And of course, it's not all abuse. During the modern period, there were 2 world wars and, of course, other wars. And now there's a terrible Ukrainian conflict as well. And art is an expression of all this. But sooner or later, we have to say enough is enough. The art can't go on the way it's going. And we've just got to take stock. Everything has to be recalibrated. And I think that recalibration will take the form of a renovation, where certain composers and painters and writers look back to the very roots of creativity in the civilized Western world, which is the Renaissance, of course. For a long time, I thought we'd enter a second Renaissance, but I don't think it's as simple as that. Anyway, that's what I believe.
That's absolutely fascinating, because I have to say, a lot of what you've just said chimes in with my sort of round the dinner table rants, my poor family, about the way that, as you said, art has been abused, I think manipulated. I think we have been manipulated as a society, as a culture, by this idea that art is a commodity that is to be bought and sold, and if necessary slapped onto a product. If you hear "O Sole Mio," everyone still sings "Oh, just one cornetto." It's
yes,
to one extent, it means people know the tune, but they always associate it with a product, and actually that wasn't in any way how it was intended. I love the idea of a renovation, but I do believe that we're on the cusp of something truly transformative, a sort of a third, possibly even a fourth dimension to music that we've never seen before.
Gosh, that's interesting.
Digital choirs is on the cusp of it. I mean, traditionally we work together as a group. We go into a concert venue, we perform. The music is briefly all around us in all dimensions. Everyone takes it into themselves, and then it's gone. Very best, what you'd have at the end of it is a 2-dimensional recording, which you can buy on CD and listen again, but it's not the same as being there. Now, what we have done together, really, including yourself, Patrick, over the last couple of years, is to capture sound in a different way with every voice recorded individually, so that all of our performances, if we were so minded, could be infinitely malleable and editable. And once you've recorded your quantiqualia, for example, and got 1,000, 2,000 voices, you could set up an algorithm so that every time you listen to it, it would be mixed slightly differently, so it would be a different performance. You can set up a virtual reality world where you can move through quantiqualia, and if you decide to turn left at a particular point, you enter a sort of a field of tenors, or if you turn right, you're in the sopranos. But you can experience music in a completely new way that is very individual, which we've never really had before. And I think it's a fascinating place to be. It's one of the reasons why I believe so passionately in digital choirs. I think that this is the start of something very, very different and very special.
Going on from that, Ben, you and I have had a chat about this before. If one thinks when Beethoven was alive, Patrick, I wonder how many people had heard his Third Symphony more than 5 or 6 times. And to say that you've heard the Eroica Symphony 5 times might be something you'd brag about at in your part, because the only way you can hear it is in the concert hall. You can't hear it anywhere else other than in the concert hall. So then, of course, along came recordings, and suddenly people could hear it on a long playing record. And then it comes onto Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon and everything. But the music is exactly the same. The music has not changed. It's the way the music is distributed to people that's changed completely.
And performed.
Yeah, and performed. And Ben and I think that this could well be the next stage of this never-ending process of the distribution of music, in that rather than having to go to a concert hall to take part in quantiqualia, you can be in Mexico, you can be in Australia, you can be in Japan, you can be anywhere, and you can take part and enjoy it in a different way, because when you hear it in its entirety, you're in it. It's you're part of it, and so it's a very interesting sort of, we think, a sort of the next stage in bringing music to the world, rather than expecting everybody to have to go to the concert hall.
Absolutely. And I can't help thinking as well that although you and I and others can see so far in advance and believe that music will take on a certain sort of format within performance on a digital platform, we can't see right into the distance where there will be other avenues opening that are beyond our imagination now. And I think that what we must do is think big. As a person, as a composer, as a human being, I've never been afraid of thinking big. I think it's something to do with having a faith in God, who's everywhere and all-encompassing, and who wants us to think big. And I think you're absolutely right to be thinking the way you are. I think the same, and I think others think the same. But what I'm saying is I'd encourage us all to remove blinkers, which we all have, and look even further beyond that. The other thing I think is that we're talking about epic and universal through the digital platforms, but we've also used it a lot, Ben, the word individual. And what's so perfect, say, about a recording of quantiqualia with the Choir of the Earth, is that the final result is just an enormous wash of glorious sound. But you have something that you don't have with the old conventional choirs, which is you have a soprano in his or her own room recording themselves. There's much more of an individual aspect than there is to singing in a choir, even though you're an individual voice within a choir. And I think this is very important. So I think it's important to have one eye on the universal and the distance and the whole thing, but never forget the importance of an individual,
oh, yes.
without whom none of this could happen.
You are
And individual experiences, individual emotions, individual suffering, individual expression. And I think that's the joy of where we're going.
I think you're absolutely right. I've had messages from choristers who, for example, we've got a fantastic bass called Jeffrey who sings with us. He is in Australia, and he always signs up for our courses. We've just finished the Armed Man by Carl Jenkins, and he will always watch our sessions later on. He can't be there live because it's the middle of the night when we're streaming, but he will always watch the sessions, and then he does the recording. And he has written about this because I think those people who come along live, you know, they get the sort of encouragement of everyone else in the comments, and right, I'm going to record this afternoon, good luck, and they have a little chat over Zoom, and then they record. And yes, the act of recording is still very individual, but they have, you know, they feel the support of their fellow choristers around them. Whereas the choristers on the other side of the world, and we have Michael in Singapore, we have Jill in Thailand, they all have to put a huge amount of faith in themselves, in the choir, in the music, in order to take that step to and that responsibility, that feeling of I'm going to watch this, I'm going to learn it, I'm going to sing it, I'm going to send it in, and at no point am I going to have that instant feedback that I get from just looking across at my desk mate here, or by getting a comment. I'm going to do this for me, by myself, but for everyone else as well. And I've been immensely moved actually by the emails that I've had from choristers like that, who say, you know, it's a very different experience, but it makes me a better singer overall, because I'm not relying on everyone else. I'm taking responsibility. I feel more powerful. And that word again, that faith, and as you were saying, you know, faith in God, faith in us as a species, faith in us as a choir, it really does just bring you to this place of kind of spiritual fulfillment almost.
Yeah.
I think.
Can I say? Oh, sorry. Can I say it 1 second, Mark, as well? That we're talking about the perspective of the singers. There's an interesting perspective from you as the conductor, Mark, from you as the overseer, everything. But from the composer, it's very interesting, because I've always found it moving and humbling to see a choir in a hall, or an orchestra in a hall, rehearsing my music, giving their time, you know, for something I have created. But as a composer, it's a different experience to know that individuals in Thailand and wherever in the world, in this country, are in their own individual rooms, practicing my music, and then hitting a record button and singing my music on their own, one person within a room. It's beyond humbling, actually.
Well,
and it doesn't mean, it does mean that the finished result is going to be very different.
Yes.
From a conventional choir, not just in terms of the fact it's in one room and it's a sound that happens then and there, but I'm talking on a spiritual level.
I think that's true, Patrick. And when in a traditional concert performance, you know, we have the choir, we have the orchestra, we have the soloists, we have the conductor, and each performs their own job and their own role superbly well. But as I may have said to you before, you know, when the concert is over, the choir puts on their overcoat, gets into their car, and they drive home. And the soloists put their champagne in the fridge and their flowers in the vase. But with us, the comments mean that Patrick Hawes can join the choir at the choir's level. The soloists can come along and chat and say, "Oh my gosh, you were amazing," and the choir feels so uplifted that you and the soloists and the conductors come along and makes everybody on the same level. And I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to bring everybody together with this piece of music, rather than the sort of rather traditional stratified way in which some traditional music is performed.
Mark, if I can just chime in here very quickly, one of the reasons I think I chose Quantiqualia as my Desert Island discs for Bristol Uni, and I really, really genuinely mean it. It's musically, I love the piece to death, absolutely love it, but the experience of commissioning the teaching from you, which you did such a brilliant job of back in 2020, and then conducting the rehearsal, and then putting the recording together, and then conducting the final performance. I was there waving my arms in my room here in North Bristol. No one else no one else is in the house, but I was watching these comments streaming up, and as I'm conducting and just sharing this gorgeous sound with everyone for the first time, up pops this comment from the composer Patrick Hawes,
yes,
who says, "This is the best this bit's ever gone."
It has. I remember the bit.
And I was conducting it at the time. I'm in the middle of the performance, and I glanced down at the comments, as I do, because you always want to keep an eye on this, just in case the sound cuts out and you're there really into it, and you look and you realise that you've been waving your arms for a minute and everyone's shouting at you. So I glanced and I see this comment from you, and it was emotionally, it was like being hit with a sledgehammer in a good way. It was like, it was just so powerful to be in the moment of conducting it, and to have that sense of, yeah, go on, great, this is good, keep going. You don't get that when you're on stage. You just don't.
You don't. And I was going to say that we mustn't forget, on one level, simplistic though it may sound, that music is about people. All art is about people.
Yes.
And, you know, the new platform you two have created has brought so many people together in so many different ways. Again, even though it all germinates from people in their individual rooms, you know, to be able to say that in the middle of a performance and share it with all the performers on a personal level is absolutely, it's spine-tingling. It really, really is.
Well, this is the thing. This is why that performance will always be a kind of a keystone performance for me as a person, as a musician, as a conductor, because I'd never experienced anything like it before. It was remarkable.
Before we move off Desert Island Discs, Patrick, you'll remember that I got this phone call from Dame Louise Casey, who said, you know, hello, you don't know me, but if you're Mark, can I talk to you about my Desert Island Discs?
Yes.
And she was on the number 22 bus, I think, and one of her friends called her on her mobile to say, you just have to listen to this piece of music. And she gave her the link, which was our Quantiqualia 2. And by the end of the bus journey, Patrick, by the time she got off the bus to go home, she had said, I'm going to have this in my top 8 next Thursday or Friday or whatever it was. And she had it as her 8th piece.
The last one.
The last one on, and it was just, I mean.
And her voice cracked as she was talking about it. She was so, you know, the emotions of it all. It was just phenomenal.
But moving on from that, Patrick, because you've got more than one piece of music. I mean, I was driving the other day during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee weekend, and I heard the whole of the Highgrove Suite played on Classic FM. It wasn't just one of the movements; it was the whole thing. And so that must have been quite an experience to write the Highgrove Suite for the Prince of Wales. And I think, if I'm right in saying, you conducted it in Highgrove itself, am I right?
Yes, I did, yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, because last weekend I conducted the Highgrove Suite with the English Chamber Orchestra in Minchinhampton Church in Gloucestershire, which is very near to Highgrove.
Right.
Which was wonderful, because it's 12 years ago I wrote it. It was the most amazing experience. It began as a one movement work, which I wrote for the Prince's 60th birthday,
right,
in 2008, and that took place in the Floral Hall in Covent Garden. And afterwards, I met him. I was asked to write a piece of music for this occasion, and I thought, for harp, it was for harp and string orchestra, and I thought it has to be florid, it has to be gardens. So I chose an area of his gardens at Highgrove called the Stumpery, where there is a statue called the Goddess of the Woods, and that was called Goddess of the Woods. And then after that premiere, I spoke with the Prince and said that I could write more music about his garden. He said, well, why don't you? So I wrote 3 more movements, and it became the Highgrove Suite. And it was premiered in the Orchard Room at Highgrove with the Philharmonia and the Royal Harpist, Claire Jones. Yeah, it was wonderful. It was one of the great experiences of my life.
Well, I seem to remember him turning, because I think that was televised, Patrick, because I'm sure I saw it on television.
It was, yes. It was presented by Alan Titchmarsh.
Yes, and I remember him turning to, I think, His Royal Highness and saying, you know, you really are a genius.
Well, I don't know about that. It's a bit embarrassing, really.
That's all right. I think I'd get behind that. No.
So what are you working on now, Patrick? What's the what's going on in that creative mind of yours?
Well, over lockdown, the 2 years of COVID, I wrote a piano concerto and an opera on Gobelino, the Witch's Cat, which is probably known as a children's book to some of your members of the choir, particularly the older members. Beautiful story about a little cat that's born a witch's cat but wants to be a kitchen cat. And on and off, it's taken me 18 months to compose it. And I just finished the last bit of orchestration last week. So I've reached a kind of watershed. And now I am just about to start work, interestingly. I don't want to give too much of this away to people. It's the first time I've spoken about it. But I'm writing a new oratorio, Ben, which has something of the flavor of Messiah about it, that universal biblical text. I'm not going to tell you its name or anything because I just don't want to jinx the project. No. But I've got the first bit of text from my brother who's compiling them. And I'm very, very excited about it. The other thing I'm doing is I'm recording a Christmas album with Voce, who are a very good American choir based in Hartford. And we're recording, it's been on the boil for a couple of years, but was put off because of COVID and everything. So we're recording it in January. I've collected a lot of Christmas music over the years, which hasn't been recorded, but I'm writing a lot of new stuff as well at the moment.
Brilliant. Patrick, do you need the words first when you compose, or is the music in your head and you just need to make sure the words fit the music?
90% of the time I like to have the words. Sometimes with my brother, it's only ever happened because he's the only poet I really know understands what I'm doing. I'm sure there are others. But sometimes if we can't quite get what I want, I'll send him the music and he'll write the text. In fact, that's what happened with Still the Night, the piece I wrote for you. And with your permission, I'd like to put that on the new recording in America, if that's all right.
Of course. I mean, it's your music, but what an honor. I mean, if you were able to say first performed by Choir of the Earth.
Oh, of course. That's on the score anyway. Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Actually, Patrick, just on that, I mean, you've said about writing during lockdown, and we've sort of jumped almost straight into today. But how have you found, as a composer and as a practicing musician, how have you found the transition from being indoors and can't see anyone to being out and about and performing?
Well, I've found them both productive for me. I don't mean that unkindly, because I know that lockdown for a lot of people was very painful. And for the performing arts, it was death, wasn't it? I mean, there's not a profession that suffered more than the performing arts. But selfishly, as somebody who loves silence and creative space and lack of distraction, for me, the lockdown period was very conducive to writing lots of music, and music I'm very pleased with. But of course, it's wonderful to come out of that. Of course it is, and start to mix with people again.
well, as we were just saying, the you know, I think it was actually a very good choice of word. Actually, was death, but in the context of what we were saying earlier on about faith and renovation, because I think if we think of the pandemic, as I was just saying, as a volcanic explosion, suddenly, you know, we all had to scurry indoors and shelter from this awful storm. But what we're seeing now is the sort of shoots of new life, new types of music, new musicians, new ensembles, and you know, it may be that as the world is dragged and lurches into this new way of doing things, the arts is as always is evolving and is growing. Green shoots are everywhere of music, whether it is, as you said, the joy of hearing a bow scraping on a string and breathing people around you, or whether it is a digital choir that no one would have dreamed of existing, you know, even 3 years ago, and is now performing, you know, all over the world. It's quite something.
Yes, well, I think the Choir of the Earth is one of the great success stories in the arts, isn't it? From the lockdown, and it was a death of performing art. But thinking about it, the Choir of the Earth is like a kind of the seed of the resurrection.
Yeah.
From that terrible dearth as well as death. So. And you know, to produce what you were producing, and you know, and again I talk about that amazing first performance of Quanta Qualia, out of all that at a time when there's this great state of inertia, is nothing short of remarkable. And I mean, what a birth. And that's it. It wasn't a one-off, it was a birth which is organic and will grow and grow and grow and grow and grasp all the exciting opportunities of this new period, which I believe is upon us.
So I think it just leaves me to say, Patrick, with the greatest of thanks from Ben and myself and all the members all over the world of Choir of the Earth, what an honor it's been to chat to you. And for the moment, Patrick, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Ben. It's been a joy to talk about things, you know, I really feel passionate about, and a joy to talk to you both, and indirectly to members of the choir, to whom I'm very grateful to for their support and their wonderful singing.